Welcome back, and joining me with more insight on the day's trade is Annatjie Van Rooyen from Regenesys Business School. Thank you so much for your time, Annatjie. Annatjie, what would you say is the current state of the rand? Because it's been very, very strong. I have seen a little bit of a pullback, but still below 17 Rand 50 against the US dollar. So what do you think about its position at the moment?
Good afternoon, Annatjie, and thank you for having me on your show. Yeah, well, I think the main market mover at the moment is the US dollar, which is on the front foot. And of course, this is supported by reduced expectations of Fed rate cuts and also further supported by an upwardly revised 3.8% annualized GDP last quarter in the US, reflecting a resilient US economy and the consumer for the first half of 2025. So the rand today has lost ground against the firmer US dollar as supportive economic data releases prove that economy is resilient despite that labor market that is cooling in terms of non-farm payroll numbers, but jobless claims reflecting reduced layoffs. So the rand, I don't think we've seen a change in direction. I do think that the rand will still trade firmer against the US dollar into the year end. But for now, in the very short term, we saw knee-jerk reaction on the back of those GDP numbers.
Yeah, and of course, this segment is pre-recorded, so by the time it is, PCE will be out. But I mean, do you think that PCE will have any bearing on the market expectations of the Fed at this point?
Definitely, investors are now awaiting that PCE number, and that, of course, we all know that is the Fed's favorite inflation indicator. So the number that is expected year on year is an increase of 2.7%. That's up from 2.6%, and the core rate is expected to remain at 2.7%. This is well above that inflation target of 2%. So it's very important for the market what the outcome of that PCE release is. So definitely investors are watching to see what that number is going to look like.
All right. Well, something that we've also been looking at is TikTok and to see if a deal would be reached in the US. I know that Trump signed some executive order approving a deal, of course, that would provide a lifeline for TikTok. Any news? What are we waiting for on that front?
It's been approved on the US side. It values the deal at $14 billion, but it hasn't been approved on the Chinese side yet. So these negotiations have been ongoing for quite a while. So hopefully they can conclude that. But from what's been announced last night is that ByteDance will retain, I think, just less than a 20% stake. But like I said, it still needs to be approved by the Chinese government.
All right. Well, let's get into some of the JSE company news. Not a lot, but we did get Gold Fields finally getting the green light for the Gold Road acquisition. I mean, it's been a long road considering the disputes at the beginning of the transaction disposal. How much glitter will this add to Gold Fields' I guess, operational, financial capability and runway?
I think it will add quite a bit of glitter. So the purchase went through for $3.7 billion after Gold Fields had to sweeten that offer, as you have mentioned, to conclude that public spat between the joint venture partners. So Gold Fields will now take full ownership of that lucrative gold mine in Western Australia, and they've produced more than 1.5 million ounces since operations began in 2019. The Australian mine is expected to produce up to 355,000 ounces this financial year. And that's worth about 1.8 billion at a price of $3,200 per ounce. So the mine can extract an ounce of gold for about half that cost, and that makes it a very profitable operation.
All right. Well, let's get into the last piece of company news that we're looking at today before we get to your stock pick process. They announced this morning that OLX is acquiring a car platform in France. Just highlight, that deal and what it means for Process and particularly its strategy in the e-commerce space.
Yes, the acquisition of that French auto trader for 1.1 billion euros will accelerate growth in Europe, where it is set to conclude the transaction of for Just Eat, takeaway.com. So the latest transaction is an expansion of OLX, which is one of the best performing assets in that portfolio. It's viewed as an opportunity to take the scale and artificial intelligence capability and bring it to the French business. This company has stated that the goal is to build a global tech champion out of Europe. So this will be the third largest acquisition for Prosus since the new CEO took over just about a year ago.
All right. Well, Annatjie, let's get to your stock pick. Where are you finding opportunity today?
I'm going to go with a local stock. I still think that the entire South African banking sector offers very good value. And I do like quite a few local counters on the back of that strong GDP print that we received from the US yesterday. But specifically, I'm looking at FirstRand after the impressive set of results that they've announced recently, and the fact that return on equity remains strong and it's also expected to remain within that target range. We'll also see results from Capitec next week that might just provide a nice underpin for that banking sector, and that FirstRand share price has actually pulled back to a nice technical entry.
Well, thank you so much for that analysis, Annatjie. Really appreciate your time today. That was Annatjie Van Rooyen from Regenesys Business School.